Hey guys, happy Thursday and welcome to tea time. So I hope you guys have your teas, your coffees, whatever it is on this noontime, this Thursday noontime. Yeah. So I am excited to be back and I was out for a whole week and I'm excited to be back and to be doing my tea time. And I'm excited to have one of my friends that I actually met while traveling to join me live. So maybe I can just get her on here and we can just start this conversation. I was thinking about our conversation earlier and I was like, oh, she is literally the definition of meeting like the vibrant souls while you're traveling, while you're outside of your own, like home or where you grew up. And just like that instant connection, that instant, eye to eye warmth and hug and no words. But let me have her on here. So this is Cami. Let's see, I think. Hey!
Hey,
How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Oh, about to fall. There you go. I'm doing pretty good. I just came back. When was it? The other day from Mexico, so it feels good to just be back at home too in your own comfort of your bed and your little things.
Yes, totally.
How are you?
I'm so well. I got some ingredients to make some kitchery later today. I got my chai, and I'm
Uh,
super excited to connect with you. I feel like this has been a long time coming.
yeah, it has been totally. I'm excited to hear more about like your journey, and also I don't think we ever had the conversation either of how I don't know like how to say it if like you found Baba or Baba found us, but there's that feeling of like Baba always knew us, so it's like how do we find him?
Right. Yeah. We sort of just realized that he's like tapping on our shoulders saying, "Hey, I'm here for you. What's up?"
Yeah, it's like oh yeah, exactly. So cheers. I know I saw your
Cheers.
tea. Hmm. Virtual cheers. But I was thinking about us earlier, and it's a little bit what I said before you hopped on, where like I met you while I was outside of like California, right? And you're literally the definition of like meeting a vibrant soul while
Hmm.
traveling, like while stepping into the vibrant unknown. Because I don't even remember, like I remember like us looking at each other and we just like had a smile and we just like gave each other a hug and like no words were like really exchanged until afterwards. I don't know if you remember that, but
I totally remember that because it was like so bizarre, but also so perfect, and like it felt familiar. Like we just looked at each other and we were like,
yeah. Like,
"Hey!" Like it was
yeah.
like, yeah, we had known each other for so long, and I think even after that, we didn't get to conversate for very long, but we connected, and we were just like, "Oh yeah, we're in each other's lives forever now," kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm so curious, like, how did you like find Baba? How did you I mean, I always also feel like we've always been on this path. We've just never known it. But how did you become aware of it or
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, there's like a big answer and a medium answer and a small answer to that. But I'll start with a small one, and we can expand a little bit more as we talk about like the transition from the life I used to live to the life I live now, which I know you wanted to talk about.
yes.
But yeah, basically, I did a yoga teacher training in 2018, and my teacher is a devotee of Baba.
Oh,
And
okay.
so she was very good about being like, okay, this is a yoga teacher training. Here's all the things you need to know to be an amazing yoga teacher of the physical practice, of the philosophy, of whatever you decide to go down. And she was like, this is part of my personal life, but I'll sprinkle it in. And if it feels good
Mm,
for you, you can follow that path or not. So she wasn't
that's
like,
awesome.
here's this
Pushing.
thing. She was just like, here's a thing. And if you like it, then you do. And I was
It's
just like, Instantly.
it's as if like the teacher knew like Baba's gonna connect to their hearts, and he's gonna do his
Right.
thing.
Totally. And so it was so easy. Like when I started listening to his teachings, to me, it was like, yeah, I know that. I just didn't have the language for it. Or like, yeah, that makes so much sense. I just didn't know how to say it or feel it or put words to it because I had grown up in a religious family. And then for a while, I became atheist because I was like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I still felt that there was something more. And then when I started like learning from Baba's teachings and from Ram Dass, I was like, oh yeah, it's just love. Everything is
like
love.
it's so simple, huh?
And I can speak that language. I know that that makes sense and it feels good in my body. It doesn't feel constricting or tight or like I need to be this way or that way or do these things because they told me to. It was like, oh yeah, I get to be me. I get to connect to other people and nature and the universe, and I get to be love and I get to be in love, and like that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's crazy because it's so simple. Like it's just being love. Like that's it. You know?
Right.
What religion did you grow up in
So I grew
or
up
believing
in Christianity.
Okay.
And
Was it hard for you to kind of let go of the Christianity faith almost, or like the identity of being Christian and being
yeah,
atheist for a
so
while?
yeah, I really felt like I just kind of didn't, I just stopped participating almost because I was like, I don't want to say I don't believe in God. I don't want to say I don't believe in that anymore because I knew that it would hurt my family's feelings or some of my family. Some of my family isn't so religious, but I was trying to be like, I don't want to rock the boat, but like, I don't like what's happening here, you know, because I was seeing things that didn't make sense and I was seeing people who were being mean or judgmental or all these things, but then saying, oh, I'm good, I go to church. And I was like, no, wait, it
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, you know? So yeah, it was a little bit hard, but at the same time, I was kind of like a rebel at that stage in my life anyway. So I was like, I don't care. I'm
like
gonna
I can
do whatever
this.
I want.
I can totally do this.
Yeah, so it was okay.
And then how did like I'm also very curious to ask you because I also grew up religious and I grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
And for me it was a lot of curiosity of like going to the Vatican in the Vatican City and thinking I was gonna have like this spiritual, profound like feeling, and I got there and the first thought was like, oh my god, this is a business. And a lot of thoughts have come through since then, but that started my own like, oh, maybe I don't want to be a Catholic anymore, or who am I without this Catholic identity?
Totally.
But it's like the same space of like rocking the boat where it's like, I don't know how my parents are going to take it. You know, am I going to lose the people from church, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's so much that comes with it because you have like your life. It's a part of your life, right? And like your family members that you spend so much time with. And I think for me, it was easier to like step away than it was to say like, hey, I'm practicing Hinduism now.
Okay.
It was harder for me to be like, hey, family, I go to Hindu temples and I have a Hindu guru and this is what I
they probably think it's thought it was so weird.
Yeah, they
so
were like,
strange.
What are you talking about? What is a monkey god? And I was like, yeah, not Jesus. That. I'm just gonna we're gonna do this in doses.
Little bits and pieces. So then you went into after that you went into that space, I guess, or like the season of being atheist.
Yeah.
Right? And how was that?
Yeah, you know, like I said, I was kind of a rebel at this time. I was like an angry teenager, like F the world. And so being atheist was just another part of that. It was just like, I don't believe in anything. We die, we go into the ground, and that's it.
That's it.
Like, I don't care. I don't care about anything. I'm angry. Like, you know, everything that comes along with that. So I feel like being atheist for me was kind of like it was just a recognition that what I had seen about religion didn't make sense. And so I was like, there can't be God if that's what they're saying God is. Right?
Okay.
So I just was like, if, you know,
what are like so what are like some of the things that you heard at the time of like what God was, and it just didn't make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
I think the biggest things were like, you know, in Christianity, it's like, if you're not a believer, you're condemned to hell. So I remember one day asking my dad, because my grandfather on my mom's side is not religious, and he was like pretty vocal about that. So I remember one day asking my dad, I'm like, hey, Grampy doesn't believe in God. Like, he told me that today. Does that mean he's going to hell? And I remember my dad like fumbling trying to answer this question for me, because of course he doesn't want to tell me my grandpa's going to hell.
yeah.
But in alignment with what he had already been teaching me, that's what was true. And so I'm like, I'm looking at my grandfather. He's an amazing guy. He's so helpful. He's so kind. He's compassionate. He's always helping other people. He works hard. Like, he's a great person. Why does that mean he has to go to hell? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so
that's so tricky too, because it's like family, right? Like, it's such a good question to ask, because it's like, oh, that's like the closest that he can get to where it's like you're teaching, but then also like the truth in a way. Like, how do you explain that, you know?
Totally. Right. And it was like, you know, because when they're teaching like about hell, they're talking about the bad people. So they're like, you know, and then this is like a whole nother thing we could go into, but then they're labeling certain types of people as bad or wrong because of certain things, which isn't even true anyways. But whoever they put this label of bad or wrong on was now the people going to hell. But that's when, I asked this tricky question of like, wait, this is a good person who isn't subscribing to what you're talking about. What does that mean? And so then I started being like, well, I don't believe in that, because I don't believe my grandpa's going to hell, because he's an amazing person, right?
How did your dad answer it? Like, did he just stay in that like stumbling?
I wish I did. I don't actually remember, but I remember his first reaction was like flustered, because he was like, oh shit.
Like, how do I explain this?
Right. So I don't actually remember what he said, but I remember enough that him being flustered was like, oh yeah, you don't actually know, because this doesn't make sense.
It's like, it doesn't, you can tell it doesn't even make sense to them in a way, in that space, and they're trying to figure it out.
He's like, oh. And there was other times where I asked, like, even after I had met Baba and I've been in relationship with Baba, that I asked my dad, I'm like, so, you know, Jesus doesn't love the people that don't believe in him, you know? And he's, and it's like, in that religion, it's like, no, he doesn't. He only believes and saves the people who believe in him. And to me, that's wrong. To me, we are all love no matter what.
Yeah. One of the things that would throw me off was hearing that our God, or like the God, was jealous, and that he was angry, and that he was despiteful, and that we had to follow his rules. Yeah. And it's like, what? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, how can our God be jealous? Right? Like, how can our God be like an angry person?
Right.
Like, it didn't make sense to me. And like the same thing with you too, like in the church, where it's like, I remember one of the church ladies, she had gotten divorced and she got remarried to another church member, and there was a lot of talk. And I remember thinking, like, wait, like, isn't that a good thing? Like, she got married to another person, like, in the church, like, unity, you know, like, they're still in
loves, or like
in the space. But there was talk, because she was like a divorced woman remarrying another man that was also divorced. And it was just like, I don't know, like, why aren't we supporting them? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes I'll hear like people share, you know, like, oh, like, my God is like jealous, you know, or my God is, and for them it's like a proud thing. And it's like, okay, that's great, but I don't have the same perspective or the same feeling.
Right. Well, and it's even this concept of like, if we're thinking about heaven or hell, or like being condemned, it's like, the God I believe in would never condemn anyone. What does that mean? Like, why would he like strike someone down and like spite them and cause harm? That doesn't sound like a God I want a relationship relationship with. Like, when I think about that,
it sounds like an abusive relationship.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like when I am working through my spiritual practice of like what's really true and what feels true in my body versus what's not,
Yes.
it's like, you know, if I think about that as a human form, I wouldn't be in relationship with a human who is like spiting me, condemning me, shooting me down, or, you know, being jealous. So why would that correlate to a God that I want to pray to and ask, you know, for their love? It's like they should already just be loving me.
Oh man, you know what? I just got like this random thought of like, I wonder how. Oh, I'm like a little bit like speaking out loud because I'm like, oh, like I wonder if those are the people. Not those are the people, but if sometimes we stay in those type of relationships because we have this belief that our God is jealous. So it's like, if our God is jealous and angry, that means that like our partner, it's nothing compared to our partner. Like he can totally be jealous and angry, and it's fine.
Right.
You know, it's
you
like,
know, it's so true because I've recently been working with clients in my one-on-one container that have spiritual trauma. And this is something that actually is like, I am a trauma informed practitioner. I've done like 2 or 3 trainings now to hold space for trauma.
Oh, that's awesome.
But spiritual trauma is like a new thing that's coming into my world as I'm like in relationship and doing more work with spiritual people, where people are actually holding on to really hard things about the religion or the spirituality that they grew up with. And it's just like, you know, you and I are talking about like in the Catholic Church, like what they're asking for or how they're treating you, the judgment and the shame of like those people who are now remarried. And like for me, it's like them telling me what I should love and what I shouldn't love. And it's like, you know, just like you're saying, we're taught these certain ways that it's okay to be in relationship with something, right? If we're thinking God is jealous and spiteful, then we're like, oh, it's okay to be in relationship with that. And then that's what's happening in our physical human relationships. And it's like, wait a minute, that's really unhealthy. And there's like something really deeply rooted there to now look at and do the work to actually heal because of the church or of the religion or of the spiritual practice that was harmful to you.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? Like, I never even thought of that as a concept of like spiritual trauma. One of my friends, like a really close friend of mine, like she was Christian too, like growing up. And she's the one that I went to the ashram with. And as she was transitioning to this relationship with Baba, she would always share like what she thought and that spiritual trauma. Now that you're saying it, and mine wasn't as strong, but it's like, oh, I can see there's so many blocks to it that you have to kind of see and remove as you create this other relationship, or not other relationship, as you create a deeper relationship with Baba or whoever else or whatever spirituality. Like that's so true. Dang. Okay. Like there's a concept for it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And there's different layers of this. Like, you know, we hear about abuse happening in Catholic churches in particular, right? Like actual sexual abuse or physical abuse. But in, you know, religious dogma as a whole, there's a lot of emotional, mental trauma that happens because, especially with the religious, like the political, the dogmatic pieces of it, like you said, when you went to the Vatican, you were like, this is a business, right? Like there is manipulation happening and there is like unsettling things happening in religious spaces. And so like you're saying about your friend, you know, once you start to find the truth, whether that's a relationship with Baba, which it is for you and I, or with whatever the truth is that comes to you, it's like, oh wow, I've been taught something wrong. I've been in an abusive relationship with this religion, and there's something there to work through and heal so that I can be held by the truth, which is love. You know, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, there's healing work to be done here.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's crazy. I'm getting reminded too because I've watched a lot of documentaries of like religious cults, and it's like, oh my God, of course, like that shit's strong. That's so true. And I've thought about it too, like, oh, how are we so vulnerable to fall into those categories, right? Like the individuals who have been in those cults, and you can literally see the manipulation and the abuse, and they're still there. And it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like I think we all have like this longing to belong or this longing to believe in something higher than ourselves. And like what you're
Absolutely.
sharing, like when I started getting on this path, it's like whatever feels good. Like whatever feels good, whatever is connected to my heart and my soul.
Yeah.
And like now I'll share like I'm everything and none of it because I use different practices of different religions. You
Right.
know, it's like I'm not all in one. I'm not like, and I'm also not, yeah, like I'm not just one specific category, but I also see a little bit of how it's all the same. Like the main
Yeah.
teachings, because it's like
Totally.
the main core of all the religions, aside from the money and the manipulation and the abuse. It's like, oh, there's love, there's compassion, there's empathy, and then everything else stems from it. And then I think just people's egos get in the way, you know, and they make
Absolutely.
it their own. And the
Yeah.
power,
Yeah, which can happen in any space. It's happening all over our world, everywhere. And
yeah,
like, yeah, just like what you said is we want to belong. It's actually like goes way, way, way back in our genes that we
yeah,
thrive when we're in communities. We thrive when we're accepted and we belong to a group. And we have human brains that are like so easily manipulated. So it's like,
yeah.
of course that happens. It's happened so easily. That's why so many people are in an abusive relationship or they end up in cults and then they're like, some people
Yeah,
never even realize they're in a cult. But you hear of the stories of people who
yeah,
got out and they're like, I didn't even know until I knew.
yeah.
And,
I'm
it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, I'm curious, right? Like, I know this is like totally a little bit off the topic because it just pops up right now. Like, because you mentioned how we have like these brains that are like easily manipulated, right? And I'm wondering right now, it's like, oh, the brains that we have that are easily manipulated. Do you think that it's a lack of the truth of knowing ourselves, or like this higher power?
That's such a good question. Yeah, I think that you're like right on the mark with that. So manipulation definitely happens when we're thinking outside of ourselves.
Mm.
And so you were mentioning before too, like, oh, I do what feels good in my heart. And what feels good in your heart is actually also subject to change as you
Mm.
discover more of your heart, right? So
Okay.
there's like this transition period that happens as we grow up in this society, which teaches us to stay up here. So we're
Yes.
in our brains, we're using intellect and logic, and we're thinking all the time. And our thoughts
Yeah.
are almost never true, right? They're stories. And so what happens
Oh
is when
man.
we're taught to think outside of ourselves, we're always looking for someone else to tell us what's right
What
and
to
what's
do?
true. And
Yeah.
we grow up with parents who are constantly telling us this is true, this is true, this is true. That's how we
Yeah.
learn.
So we disconnect from ourselves, our hearts.
Right.
Yeah,
So
like
we
our gut too,
disconnect
our
from what's
intuition.
actually energetically in here, which is what the
Yeah.
truth is. And so, as we grow up, we can either figure out that we need to make our own discernment and follow our own beliefs and make our own belief systems,
Yeah.
right? And when we do that, the manipulation actually becomes harder to do because we're now down here. We're in our heart, we're in our true purpose, we're in our soul,
Yeah.
we're in our higher self, and we're uncovering that more and more and more as we like do these practices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I can see it like as you're speaking, it's like, oh, I can see the foundation, right? Like as we get into that space of like what feels good, listening to our gut, our heart, it's like, oh, we're building that foundation where when other stuff doesn't align with that foundation, it's easier to say no, or it's easier to be like, no, that's bullshit, or no, that doesn't align with me.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And Adriana, I hope I'm
Mhm.
saying that right, just
Go for it.
comments, discernment is one of our greatest gifts. And it's like, yeah. And we develop discernment over time. And it's a practice or a skill that we continue to fine tune because we are always evolving
Mm.
into the next version of our highest
Ourselves.
self.
Yeah, I love
So it's like,
that.
we step into that highest version, our discernment fine tunes a little bit more, and then we're like, oh, I can be an even highest version of myself. Okay, let
We
me step
keep.
into that. Our discernment fine tunes. And then it becomes more natural for us to be like, instantly, this feels good in my body. It's an instant yes, or it's an instant no. or my intuition just told me something, instantly yes, instantly
Yeah.
no.
You
And
learn to trust it so much more. Yeah, exactly. So you learn
yeah.
to trust it, and then it becomes like second nature or first nature, really. That's really what it is. It's like your first nature.
It's actually, yeah, our first nature that we're taught is like maybe second nature, but
It's actually first.
it really
That's
is
so
actually
true.
our first nature.
Yeah. So then I'm curious. So then from like, oh man, I feel like we can go in like so many different ways too.
I know, we can talk
which is
about so many
awesome.
things. If you want to pull us onto a track, then I'm okay with that. You just let me know.
Okay, usually, with tea times, I'm like, whatever comes up, I go in with like topics, with whoever's gonna come in, and then whatever comes up, comes up. But
Yeah.
a little bit with that tea going back, where it's like, because you shared your Christianity faith, and then moving into like the atheism, and then feeling like what feels good, your intuition. It's like, how did that path kind of lead you to Baba or to Ram Dass or to where you're at now?
Yeah, such a good question. I feel like I could say so many things, but yeah, so it did start with like I did this yoga teacher training, and I had this teacher who introduced Ram Dass. She also introduced Hanuman and Ram and Sita, who are Hindu deities for those of you that don't know. And she introduced Maharaji, or Neem Karoli Baba. And she just sort of sprinkled it in and was like, you can take it or leave it kind of thing. And I am such a student. Like, if you know anything about me, it's that I want to be a good student. I love to learn. So when I'm in the program, I'm like, I'm going all the way in.
Yeah.
Let me follow this rabbit
I
hole.
feel like you're also a very curious person.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I am like, I need to know all the things and I need to know a lot about them. So I did this with the Ram Dass and Maharaji thing. I was like, I started listening to the podcast. I got the Be Here Now book, Miracles of Love, and I just like really started going into it, listening to Krishna Das. And then I ended up meeting two of Ram Dass's caretakers. So for those of you listening that don't know, Ram Dass had a stroke, and he was in Maui for like years and years and years, and he had people that would come live at the house, and they would take care of him in the house and the property. It's like this beautiful property, gardens, everything. And so he had caretakers, and I ended up meeting two of them and becoming good friends with them. And from there, just like shortly after meeting them, they were like talking about the temple in Taos. And it was actually that week that I met you, when they were like, oh, they're doing this big consecration ceremony. It's this new temple that they're moving the Hanuman Murti in, and Ram Dass is going, and do you want to go? And I was like, hell yeah, let's go, get me over there. So at that point, I wasn't really like a devotee or anything. I was just kind of learning about this stuff. Yeah. And then I just met these people, and they were like, not everyone knows that Ram Dass will be there, but and like you can meet him, and like if you want to come. And I was like, all right, I'll book my ticket right now. So then I ended up going for that week, and during that week I had a really profound experience where I felt Baba, and I was just like every cell in my body was exploding with bliss and love, and I could feel him, and it was just so profound. And when I came out of that, I look over, and like the friend I had gone with like watched it happen, and she just looked at me, and I'm like sobbing, and she's like, oh my gosh, like you're a devotee of Maharaji now. And I was like,
oh my god.
Yeah. And so that was like,
that literally gave me the chills, just because I know, like similar journey where it's like, I'm just curious, I'm learning, like why not? And boom, like the tears come, and I'm like, well, what's going on?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And I just totally, from there, like really started learning about his teachings, and Ram Dass and Krishna Das, and this path of life that made sense to me and that I felt
Yeah.
held and loved by, which I hadn't experienced before in other religious or spiritual settings.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like now I being on like my own spiritual path, it's like I feel like the relationship with myself and God is so much stronger than it ever has been growing up Catholic. And
Yeah.
growing up Catholic, it wasn't just like we're gonna go to church every Sunday. It was like I was an altar girl. Like I wanted to be like a, what is it? Like the ones who read the Bible at the altar, like
Mm-hmm.
really involve the choir. But it's like, oh, now more than ever, I feel so much more connected to God, the universe.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
say totally the same. You know, now my faith is like, I used to be embarrassed to say that
Mm.
I liked God or that I like went to church. Like I used to be a really shy kid too, but I was like,
Um.
you know, embarrassed to talk about God. And now I'm like, I love God. Me and God are like this. I be talking to God every day. Like, you know, I'm just like, I
I
have
know what
so
you
much
mean.
faith because I've experienced it. I've experienced miracles. I feel like I see
Yes.
magic every single day. And that's not a
Yeah.
human thing. Like, humans are
Yeah.
not creating magic. We just get to experience it.
Oh my God, I totally agree. Even with like my own journey with like Ram Dass and Baba, one of my friends introduced me to Ram Dass, and I started listening to the teachings. And at first I was like, like maybe like we'll see, right? But just listening to them and talking about it with my friend was more encouraging to like listen more to it. And then they talked about like anger and the ego and just more things that I was already reading about. Like I was reading, I think at the time, Michael Singer, the what's it? The Untethered Soul. Like I was
Ah,
reading
yeah.
Eckhart, so
Yeah.
what I was listening to with Ram Dass seemed like it added and it made sense to what I was reading already. And I started reading A Course in Miracles too.
Mm.
And then I was like, okay, like I like him, he's cool, right? And then I went to go abroad for a year and I still kept listening to him, and I made another friend who was also like a Ram Dass follower, not follower, like devotee, listener, student, and well, I'm like, keep adding to it. And then when I was over there, I had this idea to go to India because I was starting to teach meditation, like guide meditation. And my thought was, where can I just get a teacher certificate, like to teach meditation? Like that was the only intention that I had. And I was looking around, and the cheapest like certificate that I found was in India. And I never had an idea to like go to India. Like I never planned it. Like it wasn't never really like an interest to me, right? And my friends had talked about it, but I was like, okay, well, let's try this out. And I was looking at airplane tickets, and it so happened that they had the first direct flight from Vietnam to India. And for me, it was also like I had to get out of the country because my 3 month visa was going to get expired. So it just made sense. Like, why not? Right.
Right.
So I went to India, and the person picked me up from the school for the teacher meditation school. And I was there for like a day or two, and I felt so off. Like, super, super off. Like, I don't know if I want this. I don't know if I want to be here. And I don't think it was like the program itself. It was just like the energy of the building, and just, when you just feel off, like you don't want to be somewhere. It just felt like that. And
Yeah.
it felt super strong. And in my mind, it was like, well, I don't want to leave because, like, is it going to look bad if I just walk away? Like, or am I going to lose money? Or, like, what am I going to do? Like, usually I do research before I go to a country, and I didn't do any research on this. Like, I just assumed they were going to pick me up and drop me off and be done, right? Go to the class and drop me off. And I think it was like the second day, one of my friends messaged me, and we were going back and forth, and he was like, is money really important? Like, it doesn't matter if you don't want to be there. And it kind of connected back to that belief that I was working on when it comes to money. But yeah, you're right. Like, money doesn't matter. Like, it'll always come and go. And if I don't feel right in this space, like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
So I left, and that night I went to this cafe, and the cafe owner had a picture of Baba. And at the time, like, the same thing. Like, I wasn't interested in knowing about him. Like, I just knew he was Ram Dass's guru, but that was it. And a little bit of the story of Ram Dass and how he met Baba. But I saw the picture, and I instantly started crying, and I did not know why. Like, why the fuck am I crying? And I was
Yep.
apologizing to the cafe owner, and he was like, it's okay. He's like, those are tears of joy. And I'm like, okay, like, the joy of what? Like, I don't know. And he ended up giving me directions to his ashram.
Mm.
And the way that he expressed, like, for me to go to see the ashram and the directions was like a strong ass conviction of like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And at that time I could feel the distinction between like my mind and my soul, where my soul was like, yep, we're going, like it's gonna happen, like no worries, don't have fear, like such faith. And my mind was trying to figure out like, why am I crying, like I don't really know him, like why am I going, like how am I going to do this, right?
Yeah.
And I ended up going back to the Airbnb where I was staying. And long story short, I met another traveler who was native to India, and we went together. And at the ashram, like I went to like the stool where he would be at, and I touched it, and I just started crying, like just bawling. And it was this like uncontrollable crying, but it wasn't sadness. Like it wasn't
Right.
because I was sad or because something was
Yeah.
wrong. Like, and I could just feel like in that moment, like, oh man, just like that presence, you know? And oh yeah. And in that moment, it felt like I just had this repeating message of like, we're all just here to be love and share love. And that's it. And love everybody.
Yeah.
And that's been like my foundation and my intention, just like with all this work that we've been doing.
Totally.
But, and then I had a whole other experience at the New Mexico, but that's maybe for another tea time. But
thank you for sharing.
yeah.
That is such a beautiful story. And yeah, I just resonate so much with your story. And I think that happens a lot with Baba's devotees. They just get pulled to his spaces or his photos or something like that. And then it's like, oh, like you feel a thing that you've never felt, and you're just sobbing. And then you're like, I'm not sad, but I'm not happy, but I'm not this. But you're like you said, your mind is like, what freaking emotion is this? What is happening to me?
There you go. What emotion is this?
Yeah, like you can't process it. It's just, you have to sob because you don't know what else to do.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah. So that sharing that story, but
yeah.
So going back to you, because I know I wanted to have you on here and share your story, and I know we have a couple more minutes left, but I wanted to also bring like you being a model, right? Because I know I saw that a while ago, and transitioning into a nomad and also a healer and a life coach.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of your journey on that.
Yeah.
I find that so interesting to leave, even with any type of career, to leave a career that's like steady or that's consistent, and one, being a nomad, because that's very I don't even know if I can say the word fluctuating. Yeah. And even also like a life coach too, because that's also a lot of work that's really like from within, in my own perspective.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you know, I became a model because growing up, I was like so thin and so tall. So I just constantly had people telling me, you should model, you should model. And I started when I was like, I don't know, 16 maybe. And at that point, like we talked about earlier, I wasn't thinking for myself. I was just picking up on what everyone else was telling me to do. And so I get into this modeling thing, and I ended up modeling for like 6 years maybe. But as I was like, you know, the peak of my modeling career was maybe like age 19 or 20. And for perspective, I'm 28 now. So this is like almost 10 years ago, which is crazy. But
time flies.
So crazy. I feel like I've lived multiple lives. So basically, like, I was doing this modeling thing, which, mind you, was so much fun. Like, it wasn't all bad, and I'm going to talk a lot about the bad stuff in a minute, but I do just want to say, like, I did have a lot of fun. I did make a lot of friends and, like, had really cool relationships. This is a part of my life that really shaped who I am today. It, you know, taught me how to be confident. It taught me how to, like, own the room. It taught me how to be so many different things. So I did love a lot of aspects of it, and it was fun. And like being that age and like being in supercars, like Lambos and Ferraris, and like going to cool parties. Like that was cool. Like I was like, this is cool, you know, being that age. But what ended up happening is I was constantly under the pressure of other people's opinions. Okay. And so for a while, right, like that was the conditioning I grew up with, so it made sense. So people were telling me, this is how you need to look. You can't gain any weight. Your waist needs to be this size or you're not walking for me, like on the runway.
So,
you know,
it's interesting too, actually, like the background changes, right? Where it's like, oh, it's the Christianity background, and then it transitions as you get older to like a whole other background, but it's still the same.
Yeah. I went full rebel. I was like, yeah, Christianity. I used to be super shy, like good girl, like straight A student, like very, very good girl. And then I was like, fuck everything.
Yeah.
Right? So like total like Kali vibes, like went into this modeling thing. And yeah, I was drinking a lot, partying a lot, you know, going to clubs and marketing parties. And I was dressed to the nines, full hair, full makeup, 6-inch heels, which made me 6'2". I would like,
tall person,
yeah, I'm tall already. So I was just like rolling in this lifestyle, which at first was like, oh, everyone's telling me all these things. Oh yeah, I can do that. I can wear that. I can be this. I can be that. But then as it progressed, I was going home after these parties or whatever it was, or after these photo shoots or runway shows, and I was just like depleted. I was exhausted. I was crying, and I was like, no one knows anything about me.
Oh, yeah. So would you say it's like superficial?
Yeah, it was. I was in a very superficial environment where I was the beautiful girl that people wanted as their arm candy to show up at the party with. I was the beautiful girl that they wanted at networking parties to make them look good. Okay. You know, I was the one, they wanted me walking down the runway for them because I was this really tall, really thin person who fit their mold or their model of like, you know, but it all was my appearance. Everything was about the way that I looked. And this is a whole nother topic we could go into, but I had debilitating anxiety because of that. If my makeup didn't look right, I would have a panic attack. And like, if my clothes weren't fitting right, I would freak out. And, you know, so my mental health.
Because that equaled to what you just mentioned, like your eye makeup, your clothes, like the way you look equal to being wanted, to being loved, to being seen. Exactly. You know, I had a friend a while back, and her friend were like having this conversation, and one of her friends mentioned to her like, hey, everybody wants you, you know, like you can always get a boyfriend and not me. And the other girl was like, yeah, but they don't want me because of me, like they want me because of the way that I look, and that feels super shitty. And I was just like listening to the conversation, and I was like, oh wow,
it's so
you
true.
know? Yeah,
it's so
like
true.
I also didn't know that my friend felt that way either, but I was like, oh, like okay.
Yeah, it's so true. And yeah, I was just in this environment, all my social circles, all my friends, all the places I was going, all of it revolved around how I looked and the way I showed up. And so I felt like no one knew anything about me because they didn't. And that took a huge toll on my mental health, because when I was struggling or having a hard time, I didn't have anyone to reach out to, but they still expected me to show up to these parties and have full makeup and wear the perfect outfit. And so they were still wanting things from me, but I was like, I feel like I have nothing left to give because my mental health just completely plummeted, and I had literally nothing energetically left to give. And I
it's like
realized,
your cup, it's like your cup was completely empty.
Totally. Yeah, beyond empty. There was no
like
cup.
Non-existent. Yeah,
the cup was like out
non-existent
the window
at that point.
I didn't even have a cup I could fill anymore. But yeah, essentially it just became really surface level, and I didn't know that I cared about myself until I was like, oh shit, I'm not caring about myself. And I've created relationships with people who also don't care about me.
When was that moment when you had that realization? Or was it kind of gradual over time, or did it hit where it's like, you know what? Like,
Yeah, I think it was more gradual over time where I was like, you know, I'm not feeling well, but I'm getting text messages that I still need to come, or like to the whatever event it was. Or it was like, I'm feeling like shit and I don't have anyone to call up to like be there for me. And then so it was like these stacking moments of like, or I would be with friends and they'd be, or friends or whoever I was with, and they would be like, that's what you're wearing, like you need to wear something else, you know, that was like, that made me look a type of way, like I couldn't be,
they wanted you to
fun.
Be like
it was
a box
fun.
in a way.
Yeah, like it almost was like
specific.
I couldn't be fun and playful, I had to be like sexy and sophisticated and like this air, like this persona that I had developed. It really felt like that, you know, a persona that I would show up as like this sexy, sophisticated, like I'm this thing, like whatever it was, you know. But I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know?
That's such a like a heart like dropping feeling of like, who am I? Like who am I?
Who the hell am I?
Yeah.
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 So that was like a big thing. And then
did you fall like into any type of like depression or like a dark season in your life when you felt that way, or when you were making the transition?
This is a topic that we could do like a whole nother tea time on, because I've struggled with depression, suicide, and anxiety since I was 9 years old, is like the earliest I can remember. So my mental health has always fluctuated, but I think especially in this time, I was depressed and I was suicidal. So it got really dark because I really didn't know who I was anymore. I really didn't know how to have a meaningful connection with someone, because I was constantly trying to be what other people were telling me I should be.
Yeah.
So I completely lost the sense of who I was, right? And that's the cause. Like, that's a root cause for depression and anxiety. It's like, who do I be when I don't know who I am?
Yeah, there's such a resistance almost, like the way that I felt it before, the way that people have expressed it, where it's like your heart is longing to be itself, right? That playful, that inner child, that laughing, joy, like happy self, and then it's like the mind saying you have to be X, Y, Z. Yeah. And in that space, like there's love, there's like seeing enoughness, worthiness, you get the cars, you get this, and it's like a pulling, almost like a resistance, like back and forth, or
it's the always seeking for the things outside of myself, because that's what I was taught, where love and worthiness and affection and compassion, that's how you get those things, is looking, grabbing, reaching.
That's what I was sharing earlier, like your background change, where in a sense like you were like Christian, and then in that community, it's like the way that you were loved, seen, and wanted, and worth and enough is following the Christian belief. And then as you get older, it's like the Christianity in a way was like still there, not there, but the modeling career came in to replace the being seen, being enough.
Totally.
Like, but still both of them were like being something else that you weren't.
Yeah, like the external validation thing that we're taught is like that you have to get it from all these things. You have to have the nice car, or the clothes, or look a certain way, or have certain things, or other people tell you your value, basically. And or other things, or the things that you own. And it's like, you know, just to like bridge this transition of when I started my yoga teacher training, and I was like, oh shit, I am worthy, just this. I'm worthy because I'm here, you know. And I started developing this understanding of the mind, body, spirit connection, of what it means to love myself and to be myself. And I like literally had to relearn who I was. Like, what are the things that I like? What are the things that I don't like? What are
Yeah.
the qualities in friends that I want? What are the qualities that I don't want? What
And
are
it's
the
really,
places I want to go to and put my energy into?
yeah. And I feel like in that journey too, it's really finding that firmness. Like your feet has to be planted on that foundation because again, like external stuff will always come in and out. And in that moment, it's like, oh yeah, this is what I want, or oh yeah, this is where I want to focus my energy, or yeah, this is who I am. And even creating boundaries of whenever those external things come in and out, I'm like, nope, nope. It's like kind of like a little,
Yeah,
you
right? Just
know?
like Mr. Miyagi taught us, wax on, wax
Yeah.
off. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then,
go ahead.
it's what? Go for it.
I was just gonna say it's literally that is the journey. Like the journey is me having these challenges and struggles. And you know, it's so funny because where I live now, which is I live in Taos right now, and I'm meeting a lot of young people who have parents that are teaching them this from a young age. And it's so interesting to see how differently they're growing up and engaging with the world than someone like maybe you and I, who has been like really been taught by the societal conditioning and the parental conditioning and like the religious conditioning versus like the open spirited type of lifestyle where I'm like, you know, oh yeah, I was taught all these things and now I need to figure out which of them is actually true for me and universally. And so yeah, that is the journey. It's like I needed all those challenges because now I can really relate and understand people who feel lost and confused and like, wait, I was told all these things. How are they not true? And I'm like, hey, I'm a coach and I help people with this because I know it so well. Like, I know what it's like to unsubscribe from all of these stories that we were told growing up and resubscribe to the ones that actually feel true and loving and supportive and compassionate. And you build your worthiness just because you're here and you're worthy.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, that's a hard concept. Like, what? Just for being I'm worthy? Like, what? Just for being like I'm enough? Like I'm seen? It's like yes, but the same thing. Like the same, yeah, same.
Yeah,
because I'm gonna share. Like you know, like that's on my connection. Like I consider the way that I tell my or share is that I'm a connections coach, and it's exactly like that. Where it's like, if you feel lost and you're desperately trying to look for answers outside of yourself, let's connect with within. Right? Let's connect with like the answers in your intuition and your heart. Like that's where it all lies.
Totally.
Yeah. So we have a couple more minutes, like 8 minutes. So I don't know if you wanted to share like the transition to you being a life coach and a healer. And I want to I want to open up the space for also for you to share like your one-on-one sessions. I know you have like a women's like retreat, right? Retreat or gathering coming up too on the 22nd, I think, on August.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'll just share a little bit about like how I came into this work. And it was just from like it started with this yoga teacher training and this just bursted my world wide open. I became obsessed with holistic wellness because I was like, this would solve all the world's problems. Everyone needs to know about it. How do I teach it to the whole world? And so, you know, and I just am so deeply in love with holistic wellness and holistic healing. So yeah, I got my 200-hour yoga teacher training. I got my 300-hour. So now I'm a 500-hour yoga teacher.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a certified meditation and mindfulness teacher. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I've done a handful of trauma-informed trainings, and I'm also a prison yoga project facilitator.
Oh.
So
I have so many questions. Like I'm going to ask you after our tea time. Like,
so I wear many hats because I love this so much, and basically all of that combined together, along with my own spiritual journey and my devotional practice, has made me into like a spiritual life coach, where I'm helping people like establish this holistic lifestyle that they're transitioning into or wanting to deepen, because it can be really hard to, you know, maybe you're losing friends, or you're afraid to leave your job and do one that feels more aligned, or, you know, it's so many things in life change when you decide to commit to your heart's truth. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, we
Yeah.
go from being so up here to in here, and things in our external world really change.
Like, it could become lonely for a while. So even in this
Totally.
space, like, I'm sure for both of us, it's like a, hey, you're going through this transition, you're not alone.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah. And so as a coach, I'm like, hey, let me give you some practices that you can actually do, and some intuitive guidance that will allow you to like be accepting of yourself, the new life you're stepping into, the new community that you're building.
yeah.
And let that transition be as easeful and compassionate as it can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So I'm grateful that you're doing this work. I'm grateful that you're showing up and guiding other people to do this work. Like, it's always such a pleasure to like know people who are in this space. And in my mind, it's like, oh yes, like in my mind, like I see us like all grabbing hands, you know, and we're together. Like, even though we don't know each other, or we just see each other from social media, it's like, oh, we're all in this together. Like, let's do it. Like, let's bring more people and to their hearts, to their souls, and just like guiding them too. Like, you're not alone. Like, we're right here. Like, we may be strangers, you may know nothing about me, but my heart's here with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of, you know, that's kind of why I'm holding this sisterhood gathering next week. It's a virtual workshop, because I'm like, man, we're forgetting a little bit that we can just reach out and we're right here for each other. Like, women, we have this vibration where we're already connected in our divine feminine all the time. But sometimes we need to like be in the space with other sisters to say like, oh yeah, okay, I'm helped.
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
Even by this person that I've never met, energetically, we're all holding this collective space of sisterhood. So yeah, next Friday I'm holding a sisterhood gathering. If you follow me,
I'll see if I can sign up for it so I can join you on that one. I'd love to be one of your workshops.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. That would be so fun.
Where can people sign up for it? Is it, I saw that it's under your bio, right?
Yep. So if you follow me, click the link in my bio. There's also the application there to work one-on-one with me. You can sign up for my email list if you want to just stay in the loop. You can sign up for this event that's happening next Friday also, which is the night before the new moon. So
it works out so perfect.
It's a
so intentional.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do a workshop on the new moon, because I want people to do their own thing on the like new moon, full moon. So I'm like, I'll do the day before. And
that's such a sweet transition though, because it's like you go to this woman gathering and you transition into like, okay, the self. Yeah, you bring that energy with you for the next day.
And then you're like all vibed up with the sisterhood vibes, and then you get to be with yourself and be like, okay, I'm supported and I'm powerful and I'm embodied in my own self.
Yeah. Oh, so whoever's watching, and you guys are watching now or afterwards, make sure to sign up. That makes me excited to sign up.
I hope you can make it.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we end the tea time? I know for sure we're gonna have to do another one, because I would love to talk about even pointing out that season of like suicide or like depression. And it really hit, because right now I'm working with kids who are in 9th grade, or not 9th grade, 9, 10 years old, elementary schools, and I'm working one-on-one with them, and they're sharing their thoughts and wanting to commit or act. And it's like, oh, like my heart just feels for them. Like, you guys are kids, you guys are little. So I would love to do a tea time about that.
Yeah, we could definitely go way into that. And I'll have you on my IG Live program, which is called the Holistic Wellness Collab. So I'd love to have you, even though we're sharing space, on mine maybe next time, and we can talk more about these topics, because they're so important.
Yes,
I agree. And I just want to say thank you so much for holding this space for people to come together and talk. I'm so glad we got to do this today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for coming up on here.
Yeah.
Definitely won't be the last, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, virtual hug. remember like the hug that you gave me, and it was so warm. So forever will be the imprint of like of us.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay,
I
guys.
love it.
Much love. If you guys have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to reach out to either of us. So I'll tag you in the bio and the little caption thingy.
Perfect.
So yeah. Awesome. Much love, guys.
See ya.
Bye.